Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed our previous episode with Michael Ray Bauer, aka Donkey Lips from Salute Your Shorts. Super interesting. You know, I hope to see that guy on the screen again at some point. Also out there, if you haven't listened to it yet, make sure you take a listen to our episode with Tommy Chong. Super interesting there. But I'm back today with another familiar voice. We talked to him once before. I want to welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Larry Hankin. How you doing today, Larry?
So far, so good. It's sunny out. I haven't been outside, but I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah, you know, at the time of recording, it didn't even hit me because I don't watch football. But it's Super Bowl Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm recording it. So, but yeah, it's on. I don't know. They have about 24 hours of pregame. I don't know. Yeah. I don't get it. just let's play football. But so it's just not going to be on for a while. I think more people make another hour at least
about those pre-shows, right? I think I heard that it's 10:40 something right now. I heard that starting like at 10 a.m. they started having performances. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, no, even before that, I was watching it like 8:30 in the morning. Oh yeah, because I just got up at 8:30 and I turned on the TV and it's pregame. Man, you know, it's still going on. I don't know. The game won't start for a while.
Well, I don't watch, so whatever. But yeah. I'm glad to have you back on. You know, last time we talked about a lot. You know, we got into, you know, like I let you know that, hey, I remember you from Home Alone as well, but Home Improvement. That's where I
first wow, yeah. Well, that was a while ago. That was when I was a young man.
And you know, we talked a little bit about current affairs and politics. We didn't really get into your book too much because at the time, you know, it still wasn't out. Yeah. But I want to talk about your book today, and I also see in the background that you got some art, and I want to talk about that as well. So, you know.
Oh, okay. Well, we can talk about whichever you want first. That's cool with me.
Absolutely. So, you know, when we last talked, you were talking about your book, That Guy, which is a great title because, you know, when you came on last and I was promoting the episode, you know, I put that in the title, That Guy from That Thing, you know, because you know, because that's how people, you know you've been so many different things and they've recognized your face, you know,
right.
Probably your voice too, you know, you got a pretty distinct voice, I think. And people recognize you, they just don't remember from where sometimes. And I'm like, you've seen them before. Home Alone.
People come up to me and they think I'm their like brother-in-law or something. They recognize. No, don't I know you from somewhere? Or are you an actor? Or hey, you're that guy. I mean, and that's why I called the book That Guy. Yeah, it's not out yet. It's going to come out in March, I believe. I just finished the last galley. I sent it in. So now I'm just waiting for it to be published. So give me about a month. March it'll come out.
I noticed you started putting up like some Facebook like commercials that you're making and things like that for it.
Yeah, I've made two. I'm redoing the last one. I didn't like it. I was wearing the wrong T-shirt. Okay. I mean, see, things like that get that when you do a commercial, it's really weird. Because it's only 36 seconds. You've got like a little time to tell them what's going on. But the first one has been out there for about 2 weeks. I don't know. I just put it up on Facebook and I let my fans or my friends or my Facebook friends, share it. So I don't know where it's gone. I just put it up on Facebook, both of them. And so I don't know how you saw it. Where did you see it?
I saw it on Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I follow you on there, and I was really happy to see that. I'm all right, cool. We talked about that. You know, it's coming out. It's you know, I definitely want to check it out. I don't really, you know, I hate to say it because I'm one of these generations. I don't really buy books or read books.
Well, me neither. I mean, you know, there's more books being sold than ever. Well, that's because there's more people on this planet than ever. And 80, the facts that I got, because I had a study about books. I know about acting, but I don't know about books. I mean, I know about show business, but I don't know about books. They said that 80% of the books sold are bought by women. Oh. So that's another curve they throw you. You know, not only do a lot of people not read. So in other words, I guess more people are reading, but more people are also not reading. Right. So, you know, so there's more people are not reading, and then the people who do read are 80% women. So you got to, so it's really, really weird. So I'm going for a very small demographic of the larger book buyer public. Mm-hmm. I think it's a funny book, first of all, but it's about my life. It's about my life in show business, particularly about my life in show business. But yeah, I've gotten a lot of good feedback from, you know, friends who I've sent it to, or people who other novelists, other book writers, because you have to have that for the back. See, there's a lot of things I don't know about books, but you know, if you write a book, then you got to get stuff for the back cover, you know, like reviews from famous people. Oh, this is a wonderful book. I read it. So then you have to go writing to people you don't know, mm-hmm. to get people to, hey, would you give me a review of the book if you read this manuscript, and I'll put it on the back cover. So that, well, anyway, it takes a year and a half. Oh. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I wrote the book minimum of a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. I finished it a year and a half ago. And the year and a half up until now is trying to get a publisher. And then once you get a publisher, getting the book ready to be published, like the back cover and like typos. It's amazing the work you do to get a book published. I think I worked more on getting the book published than I did on writing the book. That's true.
It sounds like a process. Like,
it's a very long, slow process. In other words, even if I said to you and I had the power to, you know, print your book tomorrow, you know, if you finished it today, and I said, I'll publish it as soon as possible. The soonest you can get your book published is a year. That's the lag time. That's official. Now I found a publisher who'd publish it sooner than that. So that's why it's coming out in March. But the real publishing date that I had before I flipped my wig and got really upset. Uh-huh. I won't be alive in a year. That was my out. So they gave me the contract back. But yeah, it was supposed to come out in September, which is, you know, months from now. I don't know where I'll be in you know.
Yeah, that's quite a while. Yeah.
So he said, Bear Manor Medium is publishing it. So they said, no, we can get it out by March. So I said, okay, cool. You know, that's sooner at least. But yeah, it's a long process, and it's not as interesting as reading the book, but
I bet.
It happens, you know.
And you know, this is your first time ever kind of getting into that, right? Writing a book?
Yeah, well, I wrote one a long time ago. It was just a lot of writings that I had left over, and I just not left over. It was just a lot of writings that I never shipped out or showed anybody. Okay. Because I write a lot, you know, just in my own free time. Mm-hmm. So I just collected a whole bunch of stories, fables, stories, you know, funny fables and funny stories. And I just collected them into a book, and I published it myself. Self-published it. But that you know, and then I put it on Amazon. One, right? Excuse me?
That was the first one?
That was the first one,
okay.
Yeah. And I published it myself, and then I put it up on Amazon. You can just, if you write a book, a manuscript, well, first you have to get it published. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, your own self. There's a lot of places that just self-publish. So once you get a book, and then they send you 24 free ones, you know, if you pay a huge amount to get it published. They give you 24 free books, and then you're on your own. Mm-hmm. And so I sent them out, but, you know, it costs a lot of money to advertise and stuff. So it never really sold, although the people who did buy it gave it great reviews, but it didn't sell a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I wanted to publish the second one, this one that's coming out in March. I thought, no, I'm not going to publish it myself. I'll get a publisher. So that's what I did. And it's, like I say, it's coming out. But so far, everybody's, really loved it, thought it was funny. The interesting thing is about writing a book that no matter what you write, sad, funny, horror, the public who buys your book and reads it never relates to it the way you related to when you wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
They see it their own way, which is fine. I mean, but a lot of the stories I wrote weren't funny when I wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the people say, oh, hey, you had that part about your grandfather. That's really funny. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And through the whole book, that's like, because, when I first got some distance from the book, when I finished it, I sent it to the publisher, and then it had nothing to do with the book. It was just typos and getting the back cover and getting the pictures for the front cover.
All the technical stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't pay any attention to the manuscript anymore. So I didn't read it. Now I'm trying to get it published. And then finally, when they were ready to publish it about a month ago, they said, okay, so now we're going to lock it down. We're going to send it out. So we're sending you the manuscript now. And we want to know what your last corrections are, because once you make these corrections, that's it. It's going out. Mm-hmm. So I had to read the whole book, to look for, if I wanted, this is it. This is what's going out. Mm-hmm. So I had to read the whole book about 3 weeks ago. Okay. Now, I hadn't read it in months, since I did the typos. So I'd lost total contact with the writing of it. I was now a reader. And yeah, it is funny, even the parts that I thought were not funny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because sometimes, when you fuck up,
mm-hmm.
people laugh.
Yeah.
It's not funny. Hey, man, I made a mistake. I got to correct it. So that's really what the funny parts are, is, when I'm writing seriously, well, I didn't do a good job here, but blah, 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 and I did this. Mm-hmm. But when you read it back, you say, man, this guy's just ridiculous, So it's kind of cool.
I think maybe, I'm thinking of how you describe that, right? I'm thinking of how, like, sometimes you put something on Facebook and then like 5 years later, it tells you like,
exactly
5 years ago. And sometimes when I read those things, I'm like, that was stupid. Or like, or I just look at it and I'm like,
it's different, man. Yeah. It's like, well, sometimes I read something from 5 years ago. And I'm like, did I write this?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And it's in my handwriting. So, I mean, I know I did write it, but it's just, what? And sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's really not good. And you go, what the hell? Yeah. Well, that's exactly writing a book. So I guess once you write it, you should just get on to the next one. Don't go back. Just keep on going forward.
I suppose it's because, our mindset changes all the time, Like, like I said, with the Facebook thing, sometimes I read it back. I'm like, man, Fabian, you were hilarious that day. And other times,
I mean, well, you're changing all the time, really, even from day to day. Mm-hmm. I know I'll have a conversation, we'll meet with friends and we'll throw around some ideas for either books or film or whatever, throw around some ideas. And then you wake up the next day and you look at the notes and you go, well, I don't know. We were excited about this yesterday, but I don't know about today. It doesn't, or the reverse. It didn't look good yesterday, but hey, no, this is a good idea. Yeah, let's work with this. Yeah, so I'm used to that because I've been doing it in my creative life, correcting. But the book I hadn't read in months and months, and then all of a sudden, boom! Hey, it works. Okay, cool.
We're definitely excited to check that out once it's out.
Well, I'm sure if you got it. I'm sure you'd like it. I'm sure it's. I think it's our kind of book.
All right, good. Now a lot of people do like the whole we used to call it books on tape. There's no tape anymore, right?
Oh, but yeah.
Are you going to do anything like that, or it's just a straight digital read or like a hard copy?
You're the second person in 2 days that said that. Now, yes, that was one of the part of the research I did, is it turns out that if the author does the voice for the audiobook, it sells bigger. It's a bigger selling. People want to hear the writer read his own work, which I think is right, So I already said that to the publisher. I said, I want to do an audiobook and I want to do the reading of it.
Very nice. Yeah.
So he said, well, it's based on the selling of the initial publication. If it, sells pretty good, then they'll go, yeah, let's do an audiobook. And if it doesn't sell at all, then, their thinking is, well, why do an audiobook? It's not selling,
I see.
But even so, even if it doesn't sell, I would do an audiobook. I mean, it's really, because somebody said, one of the authors, one of the novelists that I sent the book to get a review for the back cover, he said that he really enjoyed it. And he said one of the things that he enjoyed about it was the fact that it sounded like somebody was talking to him, that he wasn't reading a book, that it was being told to him. So that's a great thing. I mean, but the interesting thing connected to that is that's how I kind of wrote the book. What I did was I found a podcaster who I got along with. This was about a year ago, or even no, it was like 2 years ago. I was writing the book. It was before I wrote it. So we got along great on the tape, on his podcast. So I called him and I said, look, I want to write a book, but I don't know how to write. I mean, I can't sit down and write and concentrate that long. I mean, for 300 pages, I don't know if I could do that. I can write 10 pages, maybe. So I said, why don't we meet once a week on Saturday for an hour, and I'll just tell you, what the stories that I want to say, what I want to put in the book, and you record them, because he had a recording studio. So I said, you record them, and we'll do it 1 hour a week on Saturdays, like at 10 o'clock, I'll call you. We'll do it by phone, because he's in New York. And so he recorded it. I just recorded for an hour. I just talked to him for an hour about, like my grandfather or show business or whatever. And he recorded them all. And then Microsoft, I don't know if you know this, Microsoft has an app that if you put the sound in, it'll type out a typed file.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Wow. Well, that's great for me. I mean, so what we did was I talked into it. So he had 8 hours of me talking the book. And then he put it through the Microsoft thing and he sent me the pages. He sent me the files. We just typed out, And so then I just downloaded the files and I just edited it. So I didn't have to write it, but I just, reading is different than listening.
Yeah, for sure.
I just, edited it, just crossed out ums and ers and typos and blah, blah, blah. So that's how I did the book. So that's why it sounds like somebody's talking to you, because actually somebody's talking to you.
Right.
It's just printed out, but somebody's talking to you. So that's a great way to write a book. It made it a lot easier for me.
It sounds like a much better process than just
and it's easier, and I think it's more direct. It's you telling, right, direct. It's not, well, I guess with me typing, there's a lag time between what's going through my mind and how I type it out. I'm not a fast typer. So just talking and letting, well, yeah, what is it called in hip hop? It's a free something.
Like freestyling.
Freestyling. Yeah, it's freestyling. And that works great because you get a flow. That's what you want, flow.
Yeah, it's the thoughts, it's raw, you're not letting yourself kind of talk yourself out of things at that point, right?
Yeah. It's, should I type this or not? You're not, you got it. You're not thinking about it. You're just doing it, man. And there's where you get your flow, doing it.
Yeah. So I'm definitely excited to check that out. I mean, if it sounds like, it's a conversation. It's probably very real,
Oh yeah.
It's probably like sitting, especially if you get that audio version out, I'd be really interested in that. Could listen to it on my drive to work and whatnot.
That's the whole thing about, riding to work and stuff like that. Although I had dinner with a bunch of friends well, yeah, friends. About 2 nights ago, we went to a nice restaurant, and the father was the author of a lot of books. He's a novelist, a writer. He writes fact. He writes documentary kind of thing. So he wrote like Escaping from Alcatraz. It's a book about Alcatraz, the real story about Alcatraz. Mm-hmm. And he just finished a book called, Whitey Bulger. He went into prison too.
Yeah.
But he was in prison at the time. There was the Escape from Alcatraz, the big one where, they didn't know. And they made movies about him. So Whitey was in the prison during that break. So the guy who wrote, his name is Michael Esslinger. He wrote the history of Alcatraz, a book. Okay. And in it was the Escape. He wrote about that. And I was in the movie, The Escape from Alcatraz.
Right. You were Charlie Butts, right?
Yeah, Charlie Butts. So he invited me and his son and Richard Tuggle, the guy who wrote Escape from Alcatraz, out to dinner 2 nights ago. So we were talking. He just wanted his son to meet Tuggle and me. So we had dinner together. Mm-hmm. So the conversation got around to my book. He said, "Oh, well, Larry's written a book too." So he said, "Well, what's the book about?" Oh, we're having dinner. So Tuggle said, "Well, what is there anything in there you can tell us? Can you tell us a story from the book?" So I did. I told about, I guess, Breaking Bad or something. No, because it was Escape from Alcatraz. I told the story that's in the book about how I got hired for Escape from Alcatraz, mm-hmm. which is a really funny story. I mean, it's a weird story of how to get hired it was the weirdest audition I've ever done. It's just crazy. So I told the story and everybody said, "Wow, that's a cool story. Is that in the book?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." So they got all excited. They said, "Well, so in other words, what I'm saying is the translation of, me telling the thing into a file, into me editing it into a book, it works, because I told the book from the story, how I told it in the book,
right?
Not from the recording. So they thought it was really cool. So, yeah, I'll buy the book. So, but now I'm trying to figure out what I should do for the next book, because I only write about real things. I don't know how to make up a story. I mean, I could write a story that's real,
right,
and then change the names and it becomes fiction. And then you don't know whether, and then it could be a made up story. But everything I write is something from my own life. It happened. Exactly.
Something with experience.
Yeah, something that I experienced, which interesting. I found this about writing books. There's a big difference between memoir and autobiography, a huge difference. And in an autobiography, it's just if you call it that, if you say biography by Larry Hankin, or if you say memoir by Larry Hankin, two different rules. So biography, you can be sued if you mention anybody in the book. If I mention you in my autobiography, mm-hmm. you can sue me because I used your name and I didn't ask permission, which seems, kind of okay. You don't want your name thrown around. You want people to ask. Okay. But if I say a memoir by Larry Hankin and I mention your name, you can't do diddly squat.
So and
the reason is, the reason is, it's an interesting difference in the law, mm-hmm. is a memoir is memory. It's a book of my memory of what I did. And if I was on your show and I talked to you, you can't sue me because it's my life. In other words, I talked to you. You can't shut me up for what happened to my life. Mm-hmm. And in my life, I talked to you. But if I say it's an autobiography, I have to ask permission because an autobiography is more official.
Mm-hmm.
It means that this is a nonfiction book. That, I guess that's what autobiography means, nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
So if I mention your book, if I mention you in an autobiography, I have to get your permission. And if I make something up in a memoir, that's okay. It's my memory of, in other words, if I get it wrong. If I remember you said this, but you really didn't say that, but I thought you did. In the memoir, it's forgivable. Well, memory. I think that's okay in a court of law too.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you misremember the facts of a case, that's okay, as opposed to lying where the intent is to cover up something. So I guess that's the difference between memoir and autobiography.
Yeah, it makes sense because you see all those tell-alls all the time, right? And they're always like a memoir, right? It's not necessarily a autobiography.
And that's why. That's why in show business, I mean, everybody would sue you, because in show business, you meet everybody who's famous, or a lot of people. And they could, but so if you say it's a memoir, then if you're an actor, you can do it. So that, but I found that out real fast. In other words, I didn't know that until I started to read the book. And then when I sent it around to publishers, they asked me, is this a memoir or is this an autobiography? And so I was, it's a biography. And they go, well, if it is, then this has to, you can't say this. You got to. So I said, well, no, it's a memoir.
There you go. Easy fix, right? So we'll make sure to keep an eye out for your memoir. I wanted to quickly
that guy, by the way. Okay.
That guy. There you go. I wanted to quickly switch gears just a little bit. I see that artwork in your background, and last time I didn't talk about it at all. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that's like a thing that you do. Is that something that you just started doing, or have you always been like an artist?
No, I've never wanted to be an actor. Never. I still don't. I mean, really, I can't. The memorizing of the lines.
I'm like, it's a little late for that, Larry.
Yeah. Well, better late than never. I mean, finally he got there. But I always wanted to be a painter or an artist, but my parents just wouldn't have it. I mean, they just. So they wanted me to have a career, and I didn't want to go to college, and they wanted me to go to college. So, but I was always always drawing. And so I do that in my spare time, when I'm not acting. I'll either write. I like to write and I like to paint. Well, I mean, those and all my paintings, there's a quotation mark around paintings. They're not paintings. They're
digital, right? I see.
They're digital art, but they're more prints. That's what they are. They're prints. In other words, I do it digitally, but those that you see are prints, and I just had them blown up to 4 feet by 5 feet and hang them on the wall. So if you go to thereallarryhankin.com, that's my website. I got about 40 paintings like that, and you can buy them any size you want. So those are 4 by 5. Those are about $400 a piece. But the small ones are, $100, $50, whatever. But because they're digital, I can print them any size I want.
Yeah.
But the ink they use, I have an art, store, factory, print them. So they're really museum quality prints. They're not. Nice. I don't take them to the UPS store and get them color printed. No.
Yeah. No. You don't go to Staples and say, I'll take 2, right?
Yeah, right. I'm 4 by 5, please. No. It's a special art, all artists go to have their paintings, and blah, 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 framed. Yeah. So you can go to there or don't.
Do you do these like behind the computer, or you actually do like the brush to canvas kind of thing?
No, it's all I got. It's Photoshop. It's Photoshop. But because I used to paint, I used to oil paint, gouache, watercolor. But I noticed when I got my computer that I guess it's Photoshop. I was going through it, and they said, well, you can paint with Photoshop. So I started to go through it, and I see that their list of colors that you can choose from is over 1 million.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can't go into a store and make these. So in other words, I don't have to mix anything. That's the bane of my painting experience. I'm trying to get a certain color, and you have to, yellow and red and just a little touch of blue, and then you get it right. And it just takes me hours, and it doesn't, doesn't come out what I had in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But in Photoshop, you just go to this million thing, and you can pick out the slightest shade, the slightest hue. So that's really why I did it.
Well, you can even, like, if you have another image and you like that color, you can even hover over that, click on that, and be like, "Oh, I like that color. Let me take that and use it on my brush."
Oh, yes, exactly. If I see another color somewhere else, yes, and because I didn't even think of that color. You just see, oh, that's a great color, man. Boom. So yeah, I mean, but anyway, it looks great. It really
now, I'm not an artist, right? But
I play one.
Yeah, I have kind of an artistic quality to me, and I've actually created some Larry Hankin art here that I'm going to share on my screen with you.
Oh, wow. Oh, you have what it is there's a picture of me. There's That Guy, my book title, and there's my painting, one of my paintings, that cowboy. There's a baseball player. But, well, if you did this, right?
I did, and I'm going to show you the quick little cartoon I made. It was based off of your Mr. Heckles character. So watch this.
Oh, okay, cool. There you are. Wow, there you are sleeping. That's a good cartoon of you. Is that me outside? Yep. Well, it's a lot. Oh, there you go. That's a young Mr. Heckles.
I did that as a little promo thing for this episode. When I put up the episode, I'm going to put up the little cartoon so people could be like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Wait a minute, I remember that character. I want to hear that conversation."
But it's really funny that you picked out what everybody else picks out about Mr. Heckles. They say, because I'm on Cameo. So they say, hey, be Mr. Heckles and say happy birthday to my friend. But what they also say is, hey, wear the bathrobe. I don't have the bathrobe. That was,
Well, here's the thing, though. Last time we talked, I mentioned I never watched an episode of Friends. And so after the interview, people were listening. They're like, how come you didn't talk about Mr. Heckles? I'm like, because I don't know what the hell Mr. Heckles is, Oh,
have you watched it since then?
I've watched clips because the show Friends itself, I was never a fan of it. It just wasn't.
Me neither.
Humor. Yeah.
Me neither. I mean, but Mr. Heckles is like famous.
I like the Mr. Heckles character because just the humor, is very like deadpan, like, I could have
deadpan negative.
I could have birds. I could have cats. That's hilarious, Yeah, well,
it was written that way. I mean, I got to give props to the writers, that's what they wrote. But yeah, it's a great character. But you got the bathrobe. That was the thing. Everybody recognizes him from the bathrobe.
Mm-hmm. With that, really briefly, I just want to touch base on it for those people that are listening. I want to hear about
fine, man, whatever.
And they invited you to the reunion, right? I knew. Okay, go on.
A little story, but they invited me, but I didn't want to go at first. I mean, I was insulted. Show business, at least in Hollywood, that I recognize, there's called rules, social rules. They're not printed anywhere. You just got to get used to, who's the top dog, who's the star, who's not the star. So there's a pecking order. I call it a pecking order. And so when they invited me to do the reunion, they invited because it was so big and so famous, and they wanted a lot of the stars who were guest stars on the show. So you had a very long lag time. Like they started inviting people months before the show. just to, get them set and locked in. So a lot of my friends would call me and they would say, hey, you're going to be on the reunion. And I go, well, they haven't called me. I don't know. So time went on and time went on. And now the thing was about like 3 weeks away and I still hadn't gotten a call. So I thought, oh, they just don't want me on it. They're inviting, big stars, but not me. So I said, screw them, because I was angry at them anyway for a long time, way before the show was off. I didn't get along with anybody.
Oh.
I was the Mr. Heckles of the show, of the backstage show. So 3 weeks go by, nothing. Then I get a phone call. And they say, oh, Mr. Heckles, we want you on the reunion. And I said, oh, really? What happened? You've been calling people for months and now you finally got around to me. I don't like that. I don't think I want to be on. Thank you. Bye. And I hung up. And I wasn't angry. I was very social, probably more social than what I just said. Hidden anger. So I hung up. About 3 days later, they call me back and they say, well, we really want you on the show. Everybody says you have to have Mr. Heckles on. Now, here's what I found out later. The reunion was not made by the people who produced
the original
Friends.
Wow. They
had sold the franchise, the original owners, 4 years before this, before the reunion. The new owners thought they could make a quick buck, which they did, by making a reunion show now that they own the show and just invite everybody back because they had nothing to do but just own it and ship it out to India or all over the world. They were just raking in money, but I think they paid $4 million for it. So they were just trying to make their money back. So I think that's why they called me and said, no, you've got to be on the show. Everybody says Mr. Heckles is a good part of the show. I said, I really don't want to be on it. You invited everybody else, kind of insulted, but okay, whatever. No, thank you. And I hung up again. About 3 days later, they called back and they said, look, we really want you on the show. What is it that, what can we do to get you on the show? So I said, how much do you want? How much are you paying, by the way? We've never talked about that. So they said, I don't know, $250, some
what the
nominal fee. And I said, oh, no, thank you. I'm not interested. And they hung up again. So I don't know, like the fourth or fifth time, they called again. And now I'm thinking, wow, they must really want me. I keep hanging up and they keep calling me back. Maybe that gives me a little leverage here. Maybe the winning side is over here now. So the next time they called, they said, what can we do to get you to be on the show? So I said, well, you got to pay me what everybody else is being paid. So they said, well, we're paying everybody, I don't know, it's something like $5,000 or $10,000, so something like that. I can't even remember, but it was more. It was enough for me to say, okay, I'll do it.
More than $250, yeah.
No, for the $10,000. It was, and they said they would give me enough so that I would do it. And I remember being very happy about doing it. I don't remember, but it was in the thousands.
Okay.
So I thought, wow, man, cool. But when I got there, they just put me in a dressing room and they gave me my costume, the bathrobe, and they put me in a dressing room. And it was, they sent a limo for me to pick me up because I was now listed among the guest stars, because they paid me for that. So everybody was sent a limo there. But once I got there, they took me to a dressing room and I couldn't leave. And to get to my dressing room, I had to go through where they were starting to film. They filmed, I think, for the whole day. And then they edited it down to whatever. So I went by and I saw them filming and I said, oh, I'd like to watch. And they said, no, you can't. Whoever was the guide for me from the limo to my dressing room. They said, no, you're not allowed to. I said, what do you mean I'm not allowed to? Everybody's standing around. There was bleachers. It was a, TV studio. Like when they do shows, they have bleachers and you do the show. Mm-hmm. And everybody was standing around, hundreds of people. The bleachers were filled. And I'm going, what do you mean I can't? I mean, everybody else is watching. And they say, no, they said Mr. Heckles can't watch. What? So they put me in the dressing room and I had to stay there. If I had to go to the bathroom, I had to get permission to leave my room. And they had a guard go with me to the bathroom, and then they waited outside, and then they took me. I mean, that, so I did the show, and everybody said, oh, Mr. Heckles, Mr. Heckles. But I never got along with them, and they weren't the original owners, but I never got along with the original owners either. I'm hard to get along with.
Well, they killed you off of the show, right?
Yeah, well, that was the start of it, but in the original owners show, the original producers, I got them mad at me too. I mean, I hollered at them. I just I have ADHD, I guess, a little dyslexia. I have a temper, I guess is what you call it.
Okay.
And if you just and I don't, because I'm an actor or in show business, I'm not afraid to vent in public. That's what you do if you're an actor. You act in front of cameras and people. Mm-hmm. So I just can do that. But when you're in public, you shouldn't do that. Or when you're not on camera, you shouldn't do that. So, backstage, I would not be happy. I was not a happy camper there. Let me say that. Okay. But so I never got along with the whole thing, and I never watched the show, really. I never got along with the cast. I mean, not that I never got along with it. We just never meshed.
Never connected. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what did you want to know about Friends?
No, that was it right there. that was it right there. The less I know about that show, the better. Cool. I'm just like, look,
it's the one of the most famous shows ever.
Yeah,
everybody knows about it, and even if they don't watch it, they know about it. So.
I hate to bring it down to like a class or a race level, but I was a poor Hispanic kid in Omani. I didn't. None of that resonated with me.
Right? And nor should it. But now, if you watch television now, I don't watch much television really. I got other interests. But television now is starting to catch up, and it's a battle. But now there might be stuff for you to watch that you weren't back when you were a kid.
Well, even back in the day, and I think you were on an episode of the show as well. But Married with Children, I love that show. Dysfunctional.
Oh family. Yeah. Dysfunctional family.
They were poor, I guess. They had a nice house, but they were always kind of like presented
weird.
As poor. So. I love that show. That really resonated more with me because of the humor in it. And, they weren't afraid to go different places. I think Friends is a very, like, how do I put it? Corny, kind of clean comedy. And it wasn't for me.
Right, exactly. Well, that was the same for me. I like edgy stuff, what they call edgy stuff. And it was just, but it was so popular, man. I mean, people to this day, it's still on, and it's on all over the world. Like Mr. Heckles is really big in India. Who knew? But they get fan mail from India all the time. It's really weird. It's huge there, but it's huge all over the world. So that's just it's just an outsider show, or I don't know what to call it, but it's just different than all the other shows. I mean, in popularity, not in content. In content, it's just. It's like Norman Rockwell, which I never was a fan of. But it's just too clean and nice. You can't say anything bad, and that's kind of what the argument was about.
Mm-hmm. Norman Rockwell. You mean you weren't a fan of the artwork at Hometown Buffet? Those are all.
What is that?
Those were all Norman Rockwell paintings. So.
The Norman Rockwell. Well, no, I mean, I grew up, my parents, try to fit me into that mold of, clean. And that wasn't I was more like you. It's not my people. It's not my show. It's not my humor. It's not, I wasn't weird about it. It just wasn't. It didn't capture my interest.
Right. Yeah. Now, one last thing I wanted to ask about. You mentioned your memories and things like that, and one of my biggest memories of you, other than my first one in Home Improvement, the movie Billy Madison. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you about that last time. I'm like, man, there's so much, and there's still so much probably I could ask, but
yeah,
I'll
by
just
the book.
briefly want to. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
So, what was it you wanted to ask me about this time?
Billy Madison.
Billy Madison. Okay. Well, I didn't get along with Adam Sandler because we don't have the same sense of humor. I mean, that's really, it wasn't topics. It was, we don't have the same. What he thought was funny was not what I thought was funny. Okay. I mean, he has his own, like, you got to find your own audience. And so he found his audience, and it's not my audience. My audience is different. So I just kept to myself, and that laugh that I did in Billy Madison.
Where you were mocking the other guy.
Yeah. Well, I won't do it, but that's the closest, just to remind you. But he was the one who got me to do that. I did that laugh even bigger and weirder than that. In high school, to get a laugh, during lunchtime, I did, hey, do that thing, the mouse thing, he called it. They called it, and I would do that. That was in high school. So, and then when I did Billy Madison, I'm trying to be a serious actor, even if it was comedy. I was serious about it. He said, hey, what is this mouse thing I heard? This is while we were having lunch. And I go, I don't have no idea what you're talking about. And he said, yeah, you do a mouse thing, something with a laugh. And I go, oh my God, I did that in high school. How did you find out about that? That's weird. And he wouldn't tell me. He said, well, but do it. I go, no, I don't. That's childish. I know. He said, come on. And the whole time during lunch, he kept on saying, come on, Hankin, do it, please. And he called me over to his table. I was sitting at another table. So this is in the middle of my lunch. I hadn't finished. So I kept on saying, look, I want to go finish my lunch. And I don't want to do this. Let me go back to my table. Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, do it. And then you can go back. So I said, oh, okay. Because it was his movie, and I try to placate him. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I did it. And the table that he was at laughed. And he said, hey, that's funny. And I go, yeah, I guess, but it's stupid. I don't do it. So can I go? I'm going back to my lunch now. So I just left. So now in the afternoon, after lunch, we were doing this scene with him and his girlfriend, theoretically in the backyard in a little playhouse there. Mm-hmm. So he says, here's my girlfriend. This is Carl, this is my girlfriend. Hey, Carl. And out of nowhere, this wasn't in the script. Just in the middle of the first take, he goes, this is Carl. Hey, Carl, do that laugh for my girlfriend. Yeah. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. And I had been in improv theater for 10 years, in Second City and then in the committee. So it was like just like an automatic, it was like a trope. It was like a habit. Mm-hmm. He just said, do the laugh. And I just did it. I mean, I thought, well, the camera is rolling. It's a big motion picture. It's Adam. It's his movie. So I just did it, boom, boom. And then after I did it, I felt terrible. Mm-hmm. I thought, he fooled me. He played me. God damn it. It's on film. So I said, I'm not going to do it on the second take. Mm-hmm. And then Adam said, okay, let's move on. We've got enough. Let's move on. And he just walked away. So everybody just moved on. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have a chance to not do it. And he knew it. He knew I wouldn't do it the second time.
That's interesting because the laugh, the way it was presented in the movie, right, is like you were mocking the character Eric.
Yes.
Right? And so I didn't know that. So it was actually your laugh that you were kind of just mocking.
Well, he said, but all he said was, hey, maybe he was talking about the other guy. Mm-hmm. But what he said to me was, hey, Carl, do that laugh. Mm-hmm. Now, at the table during lunch, he said, hey, Larry, do that laugh for me. Mm-hmm. So it was the do that laugh that registered, not that he might be for somebody else. But I didn't think I was imitating anybody else. I thought he was talking about what happened at lunch. And I cursed myself for falling for it, for being that open to suggestions during a scene.
Yeah.
And I gotta give it to him. I don't like him. I don't like Adam. I don't like him personally because he's rude. He's just a rude guy. And he gets laughs that way. Now, that's great. It's childish humor. It's about 15 or 16-year-old humor.
Right, yeah. It's
his audience, man. Go for it. You're a funny guy. You know who you are. You know your audience. You know what they like. Fine. But don't dump
mess
it on
with people. Yeah.
Don't dump it on me. I don't want to help you out. But he would do it off camera. Now, what you do in front of the camera is, I understand it's for the story, it's for the audience, it's blah, 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 it's artistic, whatever you want to call it. But when you're just, two people sitting at lunch, it's just rude. Yeah. Now, he was just rude the whole time. It wasn't just that one time. But I just see him around. He's a player, man. He likes to play people. That's what he does. And that's where he gets his humor from. Everybody gets their humor from a different place. And he owns Hollywood. Adam can get any movie he wants made. I mean, because he must be at least he's a millionaire. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but so me talking to you is really, I don't know why I did it. I don't like to talk this openly about somebody that I don't like, but Adam is a special case. He's just rude, and he makes a lot of money out of it. So I can't put him down. It's Hollywood. Yeah, no. That's what you're there for.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate.
We never got along. Got along.
It's definitely if it's in the memoir there, man. We'll definitely
it's
check
in
that out.
It's in the
but I appreciate that. Yeah, and I appreciate you talking about your book, about your art, friends, all that stuff. I'm glad we did this part 2 because it was a lot more little gems in there than I expected.
Oh, there's just gems. I'm full of gems.
Talking to you part 2.
You don't want to get into the gems that I have, but yeah, it's in the book, or I do it on podcasts. So,
but yeah, I appreciate your time again. I have a feeling this is going to be another popular episode for me. So,
I hope so because this is the best. As Ignorance and Strength is the best title ever.
Ignorance and Strength. Are you a fan of the George Orwell book, 1984?
Well, I've read it, but I don't remember it. But is that the phrase from there?
It is one of the phrases in there. Yeah, that's because
it's a great book. I gotta, I'm gonna read it again. I read it a couple of years ago, and I've forgotten it. But I'm looking for something to read. It just gave me the book to read.
It's really interesting. Those of you that are have been, how do I put it? The more well-seasoned guys like you, like Tommy Chong, same thing. He says to me, I love that title. I'm like, I'm glad I picked the title. I think some people don't get it. They're like, what do you
mean? It's a brilliant title. And if you're brilliant for picking it, and it was written by a brilliant guy, man. So, yeah. But it's also true. That's the thing. It's right on.
Yeah. The way I look at it real quick is just, hey, I like to learn about other people's stuff that I have no idea about. Right. And if I can learn a little something, then this podcast is worth it for me. It's not just me, talking for the sake of talking. I want to learn something,
Exactly, man. Exactly. But the Ignorance is Strength show, Ignorance is Strength. That's from 1984, right?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the, I forget what the other ones. I got to refresh my memory.
You don't have to remember it, but I want to pick the right book because of that phrase.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of them was I forget. It was like war is peace, something like that. Ignorance is strength. And
yeah. Right. Yeah. He just switched. The opposite is the opposite. And it was all through the book.
And that's the line that really stuck with me. I read it in high school because I had to. I like I said, I don't like reading books that much, but I had to read it in high school, and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And the opening song for the podcast is a song I wrote in 2004 when I graduated high school, and it's called "Ignorance is Strength." And
cool.
Yeah,
All right,
so it all ties in.
Okay, I'm going to go get the book right now. I'm going to send for it on Amazon.
Yeah.
But cool, thank you. So I got some. Hey, I got a book out of this. This is cool.
There we go. But yeah, I appreciate it again. Thank you very much. And if ever again, you're ever willing to jump on, I'll contact you again.
Yeah. Okay, in a couple of months, let's do this again, or maybe hopefully for my second book, whatever. But yeah,
there we go.
Great.
All right. But thank you very much again. Appreciate
it. Thank you, Fabian.
Thank you. And for everybody listening at home, I appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night. Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.